everyone. Welcome to Northpointe Conversations.
Hi, everyone.
That wasn't that bad. Can you tell we've spent a week together or 10 days together?
Yeah.
We're like family now.
That's right.
But this is our Northpointe conversation about Kenya, but this is part 2.
Part 2.
Yes. And so in our first part, go watch it if you haven't, but just a little recap. We just spoke about our travels, all the schools we got to see through MOHI, Missions of Hope International. And we talked a little bit about our clinic, our medical clinic that we got to run, and just each of the steps and who had a hand in what. So that was a lot of fun. And so today I am Sylvia. I was on the first one and Rick was on the first one, but we have a new person, Chris Sullivan, but she's been on podcasts before. So people should know you.
Brand new.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Kenyan version of Chris Sullivan.
Yes. Yeah. Different.
I am changed.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. So first I just want us to talk about the prep that went into just getting ready for the trip. So at first we had some meetings, and Rick, I don't know, did you have any like specific thoughts about each of those meetings, or was it just to see like who was serious, like who really wants to go and like, you know?
Well, it's funny because I had like a sheet that I had put together to do the prep stuff. The very first meeting that we had was just a general information meeting, and I think we had like 34 or something like that at that point expressed interest, which was really, really cool. You know that the people who express interest, that's not who you're going to end up with at the end because so many different things happen. Yeah. But I wanted to communicate. I wanted to help you guys be as prepared as possible for what you were going to experience without stealing the experience, if that makes any sense. Just so you wouldn't be going through culture shock in a huge way. The more you know, the better you are, the more able you are to kind of adjust to everything that's going on. So there was information that needed to be communicated so that you could communicate with your families, the flight information, that kind of thing, information in terms of what to take, how much you could take, all those kinds of things. And mission trips are always fluid. So it's like you can have a plan, but the plan is always it's always going to change. And so one of the things that we talked about on that was just to be ready to be flexible and do whatever, whatever happens, you need to be flexible.
And that was our motto.
Yeah. And you guys did great.
Yeah.
I mean, the team did great at being flexible because we had some unexpected challenges.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of our challenges?
Probably first of all, I had the advantage of 2 years ago going. And so I communicated to you guys, okay, this is what I think is going to happen. This is where we stayed 2 years ago. I think that it looks like this is where we're going to go on safari, all those kinds of things. And at each stage, it was kind of like, no, this is not where we stayed 2 years ago. No, this is not what we did 2 years ago. This is not where we went for a safari 2 years ago. All of those things changed. I wanted you guys to have a sense of that, but they're all the time working to try and find the best place that's the safest, that has the best accommodations, that kind of thing for us. And so there really is this sense of, it's just going to be different. And the biggest thing that really impacted our schedule was we're in Nairobi, ready to fly to a place called the airport in Malindi that's down on the coast. And we took off from Nairobi.
Well, and this was a prop plane, and a lot of us haven't been on prop planes before, and so some people were already nervous. And the airline's called Jumbo Jet, and it kind of seems like that might be their equivalent to a Spirit airline.
So, yes.
If that gives anybody
it's
an
a little
idea.
Discount airline.
Yeah.
And so we take off, and I don't know about everybody else, but for me, as we're ascending and going up to elevation, I just kept thinking, wow, that's really weird. I've never experienced the pressure change in my ears over and over and over and over again. It was like, oh, it just popped, 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 it just popped. And I didn't think anything about it. I just thought it was interesting. And the plane was hot.
Yes.
The plane was hot. And so about 20 minutes into the flight, that was an hour, supposed to be an hour, the pilot gets on and says, we're having trouble with the pressurization of the cabin, so we're going to have to return to Nairobi. And you could hear everybody on the plane go, okay. And then this plane goes into this steep 180-degree bank to head back to Nairobi. And we landed back in Nairobi and sat in the airport.
I don't know about everybody else, but I had the best time because we sat right behind a British guy who was living in Kenya. And so I got to ask him all the questions that I wanted about. Like,
Chris was that passenger on the plane who engages in conversation. And it's not even the guy beside her, it's the guy in the seat in front of her. But everybody around is a part of the conversation.
That is true.
So it was fun.
Yeah, it was great. I was like, wow, this was so amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun because he had a lot of insight and just sharing about Kenya.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And we were fine. We landed in Nairobi.
We lived,
and
held the tail.
Right.
Well, and honestly, it's kind of cool because it's just one of those things where we were just so already ready to be flexible. Like, be flexible, right, guys? Like, this is what we're supposed to do. Like, even though it kind of stinks, like, whatever. And in the airport, we got to talk to so many different people.
Yeah.
Really did.
Like, we had so many different conversations with other people where I just personally was like, this is kind of cool. Like, because we wouldn't have had these conversations otherwise.
Yeah,
So,
we met other people who were working with other mission organizations in Kenya. That was cool. And that, to me, one of the most fun things was Dennis, our guide from Mohi, who was terrific. He just kept coming around to me and said, is everybody doing okay?
Oh, yeah.
Is everybody doing okay? Everybody doing okay? And we were all doing fine. We were playing cards in the airport.
Oh my goodness. I wanted to I didn't know where to say this. I have so many pictures on my phone of us playing euchre in different parts of Kenya and in different airports.
Yeah.
It is crazy. Really, this I wanted to title my Facebook post, take a Midwesterner anywhere, see how many places they can play euchre on top of suitcases, on the floor in the airport.
Yeah.
We were just playing everywhere.
Yeah.
We were ready to pass a good time.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just for perspective, it was a 7 a.m. flight that we were supposed to be on. So we had gotten up squirrely early. And got to the airport, got everything checked in. Again, you've got a team of 14 with 23 pieces of luggage that's being flown. And
somebody else had to take one of my bags on that trip. And I will say that I didn't realize when we were switching luggage around that the bag that they took through TSA had liquids and stuff in it.
Oh, no kidding.
And so they had to go through and open it. And they asked the person who had the bag, they were like, what's in it? And she was like, things.
There was a couple times where I heard multiple people in our group because we're just trying to get our supplies through and everything. And so it's like, what's in the bag? And we're like, stuff, traveling stuff.
That's great. Yes. So we were supposed to leave at 7. We did leave at 7. A little bit after that, landed back, I don't know, 8 o'clock, 8:15,
were there for 2
something like
hours.
that.
Yep.
And then we didn't take off again until about 1.
But we got those
What-
meal
wasn't it?
vouchers.
Yeah, we got some free food in the airport, which was great.
Yeah.
But it caused our schedule to be changed. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So that was supposed to be the other clinic day,
Yeah, we were supposed to spend that Friday afternoon,
doing the medical clinic.
helping with the medical clinic.
And we talked about that in that first conversation where we still got to do it
actually,
the next
we were
day.
supposed to see our sponsor kids that day.
Oh,
that
was it?
Friday afternoon.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
As we came to Chumani, we were going to stop in Kabrani and see our
Okay.
sponsor kids that afternoon, and then do medical clinic the next day.
Okay, so then what I should say is that half of a medical clinic day kind of got cut then, right? Because we had a whole day to it. But honestly, again, that's just one of those things where we put in some good work that day. All of us were so busy. I remember I could barely take pictures because we're just running around. We're working hard that day. So a lot of good things still
all
happened.
of the kids.
Yeah.
Up to grade 2.
Right? Yeah, because we asked them, I think Sue McKay asked, what is your guys' goal? Because we want to hit that goal. We were a very competitive group.
Yeah.
It was good though. And so I think they said, what did they say? 200
Something like that.
kids. And they're like, oh yeah, we hit that. We're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That was nice to be able to get that done. And then Chris, so just to kind of go back to prep stuff, you're in charge of like VBS and planning. And so what all, I guess, talk about, were you nervous? Because I think Rick, right, said, hey, can you be in charge of VBS? And you're like, yeah. Start thinking, you're like, how many kids? 500?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, planning for 500. Okay. So like, if you just want to talk about that process of him asking you and everything.
Yeah, when you first asked, I thought you were just being nice and joking. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And then when you said you were serious, I was like, this is cool. Like, I think I was just really excited about it and the number didn't scare me. It was just like the thought of, wow, this is a huge impact. So I think I was more nervous about, okay, I want it to be God's word.
Yeah.
And not like what I think would be
Right.
a really cool thing, So that led me into like a lot of prayer and discussions, speaking with my mentor, and what would that look like? And for me, it was like the word that kept coming up was Jesus is the light. And that took me to that scripture, which I really based the whole Bible study around, which was John 8:12. And Jesus is the light of the world. And when we follow him, we'll never walk in darkness, but we'll have the light of life. And that was so cool, if I can just say for a second, of like all the ways God was working in that, because once I kind of settled on, okay, this is what God is saying, then I'm at my desk and I like to put scripture all around my desk. And it's literally like all of these passages on light.
Nice. Yeah.
And it was so cool to see that and say, okay, you've already been saying this for months and now I'm just seeing it. And so then going through that and thinking about what that looks like, and wanting to have these components of speaking in Swahili to the kids for just some really cool aspects of having them like know that we cared enough to learn and to share that. And so the coolest part was like learning the Swahili for, Jesus loves you and Jesus loves me and Jesus loves everyone, which is Yesu anakupenda, Yesu ananipenda, and Yesu anapenda kila mtu. And
Cheer at home right
I
now.
know the kids were really excited
Oh,
to
yeah.
like
He's
hear
like,
that.
she can speak Swahili. How'd she do that?
So that was really special. And so it was like God was saying, hey, you need to say this. Like, you need to have that point hit home of Jesus loves them. And so then with one of the classes, when we said that, they got up and they were like, the kids have a song and they want to sing it for you. And it was something that they had already been practicing. And the lyrics were that Jesus loves them and Jesus loves everyone. And, and so it was so amazing to hear that like sang. And there were like all these little pieces that kept lining up. And I just knew it wasn't what I wrote, but it was what God was already doing there. He was already putting that message in them. I'll say two more little pieces, which I thought were just cool. But so the whole message was Jesus was light. And then we find out that the Discovery Camp that was right next to the school that we went to is called Ngaza, and that means ignite. And they want the kids to know that they are the light of the world, and Jesus is the light. And I was like, this is our message.
Yeah.
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
It's really fun just thinking about the VBS, because I remember as we were sitting in the room during our meeting, and I'm thinking, so I grew up going to church, and I think VBS like, oh, you've got 60 or 80 or 100 kids or whatever. You divide them into 4 or 5 classes of 10 or 12 kids, whatever it is. And I'm thinking, okay, the logistics of that are going to look a certain way. I need somebody to organize the team so that we've got people who can teach the different ages, that kind of thing. And so I didn't want to be in charge of that because I had enough stuff to worry about. So I asked Chris, and again, I think God was absolutely in that, from the beginning. And so then I reach out, and Mohi contacts me and says, yeah, if you can plan for probably 500 kids in this VBS. And I'm thinking, that's a completely different deal, because at that point we had even talked about a craft, doing T-shirts, taking T-shirts and having the kids paint the T-shirts, and that'd be so cool. Well, the logistics of 500
no way.
T-shirts was not happening. So, yeah.
And I will say I wasn't the only person planning VBSs. We did have a group that really worked hard of like creating the lesson and the games. But that was really cool of like seeing it executed there, because everybody had a role. And that was really awesome because you talked about like being flexible. And so we had planned for 3 hours and we thought that we were going to have 3 days and 3 hours to do this. And well, then we needed to kind of rearrange time. So it meant that our team really had to split up and do 2 separate events of somebody was doing games, somebody was doing a large craft, which was so cool to see.
Yeah.
And then we were doing Bible study and we were doing the Bible story and then a smaller craft, wearing our bracelets. And so that was really cool because everybody had a role that worked so well together and we had to be flexible.
Yep. Because that's what I wasn't sure about because, like, I guess that was our other flexible part of us losing that half a day because then we had to go see our sponsor kids. So then our VBS day kind of got cut in half.
Right.
And so that's what kind of squished everything together where we had to be separated. And I think I talked about it on the first part with the clinic or maybe just in general, but it was cool to see everybody have their own parts like you just said.
Yeah.
But it was just cool to see like you and Michaela Bohr, I almost said Skoke, but Michaela Bohr working on the side, splitting things up, and then it went so well. Like it worked so well. And then it was cool because the last day we actually were all shoved together. And so we got to see your guys' part and then we got to do our part. And I was like, okay, like this is fun. Cause like now, that was cool to see like you mastered your part. We got to see you guys put on. So actually I was almost just spoiled it. Why don't you describe your inside part that you did, the lesson part too?
Yeah. Before we get there, let me just kind of paint the picture so you have a sense. Our plan going in was we knew we were going to have roughly 500 kids. So Monday we were going to have a group of 150 to 175 kids. Tuesday, a different group of 150 to 175 kids. And Wednesday, a different group of 150 to 175
While the other
kids.
kids were in school, right?
While they're going to school. And so they would be 3 distinct groups, would do the same set of stuff each of those days, and we'd have our whole team together, all 14 of us, to teach the lesson, to do a drama for the kids, to be involved in the games, to be able to manage this large group of kids. Well, because of the issue with the plane, that changed our time frame, and so we switched everything so that on Monday we actually had 2 groups that were smaller, but they spent half the time with the lesson and half the time with crafts, and then flip-flopped. And then we did the same thing on Tuesday. So we had smaller groups, but we also had smaller numbers of our team. And then on Wednesday, we got to all be together and do that in those 3 hours. So that's kind of how the flexibility happened. And that sounds easy to say it, but it was we had to kind of modify everything to be able to help make that happen.
We don't speak the same language as these kids.
So
like we relied heavily on the teachers, and we might have spoken about that in the first conversation, but like these kids were very well behaved. Like we didn't have to have filler. Like I didn't have to
classroom management stuff.
No, they sat there and waited for us to say what we were doing next. And the teachers were on top of it. And, you know, the kids were good at being flexible too.
Yeah.
But we were like picking up little things of like, stop and listen and slowly. And, you know,
because we're like, we know those words. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and talk about what you guys did, and you were working in the church. Which did you guys think it was hotter working inside, or do you think it was hotter working outside? I thought it was hotter working inside that day where we came to watch you guys, because we at least got a breeze or something sometimes. But when we left the tent, I was like, whew, it's hot out here.
I don't think the first 2 days, you may think so, it was warm, but it was not bad because we had smaller groups of people. When we had everybody together, when we had 150 kids and our team together, it was warmer. And then the last afternoon when they did the closing time and all 450 kids were there, along with our team. Everybody's there. That was hot.
Right. Okay. I felt like the breeze coming through. And so like I don't know if you guys talked about that, but the church building doesn't have windows, but the windows are openings with like bars on them.
Right.
So the breeze comes through. And I'm trying to like paint this picture, because if you're not there, it's like, what does it look like? There's obviously an opening to the church and the doors were left open, and then the breeze would come through the window. So I felt like when that breeze came through, I was like, this is great.
Not bad at all.
But so what were you guys doing inside? Like, what did your day look like?
So it started with Rick. He was giving this really awesome opener to the kids, which was really fun, of just letting them know. Do you want to say what you said? Because it was fun.
You go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, that's fine.
He would just let them know, like, where we came from, these white northerners from the land of the snow and ice. You know, I feel like that's like a Viking song, but
It felt a little bit like the opening of Elf when Buddy the Elf says, "You trade through the raindrop forest." Because I just said that we were from Michigan in the United States, and it was a place that was very cold.
It's
and
good.
that
You're
there was
painting a picture,
snow.
though. Yeah, that's good.
It was fun.
I was painting a picture, but they didn't have any concept of snow.
or
Didn't have a
ice.
word for snow.
Yeah.
They rather than snow, a couple of the teachers translated it as ice falling.
Yeah.
So different, just a different world. Yeah.
And each of the teachers, sometimes they wouldn't always like know the same English words, so they would like ask. But they were really great at interpreting for us. So I feel like it was really fun to have Rick give them this picture of who we are, but also why we came and why we love them, and how our church has rallied around and donated this money for them, and that we care about them. We love them. We've prayed for them.
Yeah.
And that I feel like is like such a huge impact for them to know, like, we've already been praying for you. And so we would go into that by like getting them all excited and worked up, and we had a chant that we did, which was really fun. So we did the We Will Rock You beat of the stomp, stomp, clap. But we sang, Yesu, Yesu, anakupenda. And that means Jesus loves you.
Yeah.
And the kids loved it because later we would hear their little voices.
Singing it.
Yeah.
And that got me.
Yeah, that was cool. Very cool.
That was really neat. So then we'd go into our Bible lesson and talking about how Jesus is the light. And then we had this really fun dramatization where we did the story of Gideon, and I narrated, and we had awesome actors. Rick was Gideon.
Yeah, baby. Academy Award right here.
Mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
And that was so much fun because the kids really just came alive watching them act it out and be silly or, you know, use little props. And you could see them like standing up and
they'd stand up on their chairs.
Yeah.
To see Gideon wring out his fleece.
Yeah.
I had a bottle of water hidden in my fleece, and so I picked it up and wrang
Magic.
it out, and then just like magic, water came out of it. It was great fun.
That was really fun. And they loved that. They loved when Mike died. They thought that was hilarious. He was a Midianite soldier, and he would do his little floppy fish.
Twitch.
Yeah. And so that was really cool. And then we did a craft together inside where we made bracelets, and the bracelet we called them Jesus bracelets.
Yeah.
And it really just told the story of Jesus, of he died on the cross, he came for you, you know, we love you. And that was fun hearing them like asking questions and like asking them to repeat what we said and what each bead meant. And I don't know if you could see it, but like what each color meant. And so they would raise their little hands and go, teacher, teacher.
Teacher. Yeah.
No, that was a lot of fun, and especially to see you guys just doing that. Like, I don't know, it was cool to see you like give this story of how we got here and who we are, and then you to full on teacher mode to be like asking questions. I feel like I got so many good pictures of you, and like these kids are like raising their hands, like looking at you, trying to get your attention. And then, Mike dying, that was hilarious. So, I mean, we like poked fun at him the whole time about the twitch he would do after he fell.
The death rattle.
Yeah. But then, outside, we were doing a lot of the games, and I loved working with Michaela because talk about being flexible. Like, especially with the younger kids, like, we're like, oh, they're not going to know how to do this game. We got to think of a different game. And, like, so we were just kind of just making things up. And then, you know, we'd have them, like, can you sing us a song? Like, we're going to sing you a song. Now you sing us a song. And, like, so it was a lot of just being flexible. We did an over-under balloon game. So they had to stand in a line, and they got a balloon, and it was a race over one kid's head. The next one had to grab it, go under.
I will say watching you guys do that game was like brought me so much joy.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
Well, and by the day that we did it with you guys, it was crazy because those lines were huge. Like that was like, and it was just really crazy in the church. But when it was outside, it was a little bit easier to manage. And it was funny to see, like, kids are kids. Like, we don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
But there are competitive kids. There are kids that don't care. They just want to like look at you and just smile at you, and like they want to do it, you know, what they're told. But then there's kids that are like, I'm here to win. And like
You're telling a Jake story.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jacob said that there was an older kid who was like rearranging the line to make it better. Like so his line.
One of the kids
win.
was having trouble with the balloon, and so he put him first.
Yeah.
Or at the very end.
Yeah, and some kids were like offended, like,
Yeah.
hey, like I can do this.
I love
And
that he
so-
said he just grabbed his shirt and like drug him.
Okay.
Yeah.
back.
That's a leader.
Oh yeah, and then they're jumping, screaming, cheering.
Yeah.
That was fun. We did an egg race with a spoon on an egg, or like the egg on the spoon, and they had to balance, and that was cool because again, some kids are like, I'm just running to win, and other kids were like really focused on balancing.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right.
Yes, that was really cool. And then our craft we did outside was the canvas that you had already had laid out. It was a mosaic of a campfire. Like it had the logs, the flames, like a blue sky and grass and everything. And I'm sure you had it laid out in a very nice, neat pattern. But when the kids, they just got so excited to do this, they're just sticking it everywhere. And it worked.
Yeah.
It still looked really great.
I'm
and
glad we had enough pieces. That's all I cared about. Yeah.
Every kid got to put a tile
Piece of glass,
in place on the mosaic, and that's something that we left there for them.
Yeah, and the teachers did, and we did. Like I think all of our team got to at least do a little
Well,
something
and
for
the
it.
message, you know, Jesus is the light, and so we use the analogy that, you know, Yesu is fire, Jesus is fire, and so having the picture be a fire that they all contributed to was so special.
Oh yeah.
I remember.
Fire protects.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that was your deal. So yeah.
Yeah, that fire lights the darkness, that it protects us, that it keeps us warm, that it gives us provision, and we cook our food on it. And so all of that's what Jesus does, is he protects us, he provides for us, he guides our way in the darkness. But
That's
a little
good.
cute piece of that is on day one when we had, you know, started the project, we're like, where do we leave this canvas? Let's leave it with the head teacher, Emmanuel. So I handed it to him and I was like, can you keep this? You know, overnight we'll be back tomorrow to do VBS. And he's like, well, when you're done, you're not going to take it with you, right? He's like, because we want this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, we're leaving it.
Yep, that's for you, man.
Yeah.
Well, and like, so we keep talking about all the kids, and Rick and I spoke before this. We think we might have said this in the first conversation. We're not sure, but
Because everybody's been telling stories over and over and over
yes,
again.
we've been saying and we just really want to encourage people to think about sponsoring kids at Chumani because we keep talking about there's so many kids there.
Yeah.
And when we were there, what did we say? Like 3 of them were sponsored because it's just because it's a new thing. And I forgot if I said it. I know I've said it to other people. Is that when we first started doing this, and I work for the church, and when we first started doing this, I didn't realize that this was like our church in a different country. Like we are giving money directly like to build the church at Chumani and the school. Like these are our people. Like these are like there's just like this sense of, I don't know, like ownership. Like that's the building we helped build. Like pride in that, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that there was so many kids that weren't sponsored, and just because it's new, like it's a new school and everything, I'm like,
Only 5 out of 445. Yeah.
Right. And like when we were there, all our big chunk of our team sponsored more kids when we were there. So we helped up that number. But for other people, I mean, like, I was like, I think Northpointe people should really think about sponsoring these kids at Chumani. Because like I'm looking at the list online. All you do is go to mohiafrica.org and sponsor a child. Make sure Chumani's highlighted. I'm scrolling through these pictures. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that kid. Yes.
Yeah.
And
the cool thing is Mohi has an app. It actually is better than what we've had with Compassion.
Yeah.
In that off of the app, you can actually send a message to your child on the app. So like you can send a message while you're sitting at the dinner table or whatever, and send pictures, that kind of thing, and that will get to them inside of I think 2 to 4 weeks is what it says.
The message they said they get within 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Because they can give that to them. When it comes to in the app, you can give gifts, which is
Okay.
also different. Of it shows you can give shoes, you can give hygiene products, you can give essentials, which would be underwear and socks, which is
Yeah.
a need, or maybe a mattress or a food kit for their family, which is definitely a need, and also school clothes and shoes.
Yeah.
But when you send that takes usually
bit longer
about a
time.
month or
Yeah.
so before they can receive those items.
But it's just so cool that it's literally almost like online shopping, but it immediately just gets sent. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to somebody on the other side of the world, like, okay, this, is in their account. We can get this to them.
And how many times do you pop on Amazon?
Right. And
You know?
just, and it's just like $30 for new shoes. Where like I'm kind of a cheapo for myself, honestly. But when I'm like $30 and they have a new pair of shoes and like it fits them and it's
Yeah.
like no problem. Like,
Yeah.
that's the easy thing.
And they're walking everywhere.
Oh yeah, yep. Because
They
I mean,
need
when
'em.
we're on the coasts too, like it is just straight sand. If you guys have seen any of our pictures posted on Facebook or whatever, it's just sand everywhere. Our feet were like we had so much sand in our shoes. I remember
Yeah.
Carter
Yeah.
was like, "My shoes are filled with sand right now." Like multiple times, I took a picture of my feet because I wore sandals to my mom, and I was like, "I guess this means you had a good day." And they're just
Yeah.
filthy, like
Yeah.
my legs. But that's how you know you had a good day. We were playing out in the sand with the kids, playing soccer and everything. But yeah, so Rick, do you want to talk about? I think we did talk a little bit about how you and Jake went there, and it was just a field.
Yeah.
And then now there's this church and school and a ton of kids and really cool teachers working there. And you were telling us that other churches are a part of Chumani too, right?
Yeah, just last week I had a chance to talk to Natasha, who is a Mohi person here in the U.S. So that they're like Mohi's U.S. office is in Phoenix, and so that's where Natasha is. And she said that they've had two other churches that are partnering with us in Chumani now, which is cool. One is giving money to help build permanent buildings for the school, which is fantastic. And the other is doing kind of a monthly support kind of thing that's there as well. And again, I can't remember if we said this last week or not. Their process when they start a school is that they'll send a social worker. The social worker will go and meet with the families and determine who are the neediest kids that are not in school. Not just a list of all the kids who aren't in school, but who are the poorest of the poor, the neediest, and they'll start there, develop a list. And so when the school started, I think in September is when it was. They started with 220 kids or something like that, and they're now up to 465, whatever that number is, because they keep really piling kids into really small areas.
Oh yeah.
And the structures that they've built, typically they will build a cement block building, and they build it in units. So they'll build like a unit that has, I think, 6 classrooms in it. I think that's right. It may be 4. And they ultimately will build a total of six of those buildings in a place like Chumani by the time that they go from kindergarten all the way through high school.
Right, because right now Chumani only kindergarten.
It's
through third grade.
only through third
Yeah.
grade. And so they have the church building, which typically that's something that gets built later on in the process because their philosophy has been education first. At Chumani, it was church first, which is really cool. And then the school has come alongside of it. And they have a cement floor, but temporary building. So it's like a tin walls, tin roof, where the kids are meeting right now. The older kids are. And then I can't remember if we talked about this or not. The church building, they subdivide into 6 classrooms. And they do that with plywood walls that are 8 feet tall. And so they're heavy framed walls that then at the end of the week they stack up and put at the back of the church building so that it's then a big open church building for church.
That was cool that we got to see that. Like we got to see the walls up because we were doing the medical clinic like that, using the different rooms.
Right.
And, then they said, oh, we take these walls down for church. And I'm like, huh? Like, this is
Yeah.
a full, like,
Yeah.
building. That was very interesting and kind of cool to see. And we tried to help wherever we could, but they were like, oh,
Yeah.
you don't have to. And we're like, no, we
Yeah.
want to. Like, this
Yeah.
is what we're here for.
Yeah.
But Mohi, is such a cool organization. And we talked a little about it before about how many employees do they have?
They have 1,400 employees. So they have 25 schools, 32,000 kids, and their 1,400 employees include teachers, assistants, cooks, essentially like janitorial staff, security guards, because
Yep.
all of their areas have a fence around it so nobody
Yeah.
can get in. It's not to keep the kids out, but
Yeah.
it's so that no
Safe.
bad people
Yeah.
can get in and get stuff. And then their administrative people as well. And Mohi, it's such a great organization. They have a communications department. So like a year ago when we got the video that showed the church building when it was built, that wasn't done by Americans. That was done by their communications team there, which is really cool.
Well, out of all those employees, how many are Americans? And
it's
not
not
even employees?
There are less than 10 Americans who work alongside Mohi.
Okay.
There are American missionaries, but they're not included in that 1,400.
Yeah,
So
that is cool because that's what we talked about. I know we talked about this last time about like how invested they are in community.
Yeah.
And that's part of it is employing your own people, like people that need it. And it goes all the way down to the parents in Nairobi who are learning how to sew or doing hair, welding. And just these are Kenyan people helping other Kenyan people. It's not like us coming in doing that.
Let me share something that I talked to Natasha about on Thursday that I haven't communicated broadly, so you have to watch this podcast to get these stories. We talked last week about the fact that we kind of felt guilty about the level of accommodations that we had, that it was way nice.
Very nice.
And the thing that Natasha communicated to me was in Kenya, there is no middle class. So it's either you're staying in a much nicer, high-end facility for people who have wealth and resources, or you're staying in a place that's like really sketchy, that's unsafe.
No in between.
Yeah, there is no in between. And so, but the really high-end stuff is still for us like Motel 6 prices. So it's like $70 a room or whatever like that. And she said, we're never going to put you in a place that's sketchy. We're just not going to do that. And so they're always trying to find a place, the place that can take care of us the best, that can take care of groups the best, and that can help the Kenyan people as well. And so the place that we stayed, we were actually the first group that stayed at that at the, I can't remember the name of the place.
Narani.
In southern Kenya, that was cool because they were trying to figure out how well they did at taking care of us, what the food was like, all that kind of thing.
Okay.
And
incredible.
So and Natasha said, I don't know how to tell you this story because sometimes it's a really difficult thing. She said early on when they were in the south, and we're down near where Chimani is, that they came, and again they're dealing with the poorest of the poor, and they had a team come in that came to work, and they had just started one of the projects at one of the schools, and while they were there, they had a couple of kids die of malnutrition, and then they go back and are staying in a resort kind of place, and she just talked about how hard that was on that team to process. You've got kids dying of starvation, and we're in this nice place. How do you make sense of that? And I don't think that there is a way to make sense of that except to say that God knows everything that's going on. You know, God cares for those kids. He cares for those families. And the reason that we're going is so that doesn't get repeated. You know, so the reason that we sponsor kids, and the reason why even in Chumani, those kids, while some of them had some malnourishment stuff and some physical things. We didn't see really distended bellies, that kind of thing. But they've been a part of the program
getting fed
for 6 or 9 months
Yeah.
and are getting 2 meals a day. That it's they're being taken care of that way.
Yeah, and just kind of like as we wrap up this conversation too, you know, and like being guilty about where we stayed, because I think I said something like that. Like why wouldn't they want to put their best foot forward? You know, like
Yeah.
we would do the same for them if they
Right.
came to visit us. And, you know, some people have asked like, well, geez, you spent all this money to go down there. Why aren't we just sending the money? And actually, our group asked the same question when we got together in
Yeah.
our prep meetings. Like we asked you, and you kept telling us like, you guys, it's so much more important that you go there to show them that you care. You want to see what their houses look like. You want to talk to them face to face. You want to see what their clothes are like. You want to ask them about their families and what they do for work. And I was a little skeptical about it. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, you know, I know I'm excited to go work. Like I do want to go work, but then being there and how excited they were for us, and it was genuine. And even the adults and family members of the kids, when we went to go visit their homes, and like they did not want us to miss.
Yeah.
Like
You told the story last week about the lady that came out and said, "You've got to come to my house."
Yeah, like I thought you guys left. Like I want you to be here. And I hope Sue McKay doesn't care, but you told a cool story about what she said.
Well, yeah. So our life group.
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah. Chris was there too. So our life groups met together last week, and because we had 5 of us that between the 2 life groups that went on the trip to just tell stories so that everybody else could experience that. And as we're telling stuff, I said to Sue at one point, I said, "Okay, Sue, if you had to make a choice between whether to go on a Kenya trip to go see what Mohi's doing, or to send money, or to sponsor a kid, and you could only do one of those 3 things, what would you do?" She said, "Oh, that's hard. That's really hard." And then she said, "You know, I would say go, because as soon as you go, you can't help but sponsor a kid, and you can't help but send more money to see what God's doing there."
That is
which was
such a
great
smart answer.
Yeah.
So smart that she came up with that on the spot, because I think
Yeah.
you asked me the same thing, and I was like, I don't know. Like I want to do all 3. And that is a way that you can. That was such a smart answer.
Let me follow up on that to just say our plan is that either every year or every other year we'll keep going back to Chumani and go back to Kenya. And pretty much everybody who was on the trip we asked and said, "You want to come back again?" Everybody's, I'm in.
Yeah.
Start saving now.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm in. And so that's a part of the plan long term. So if you're thinking you feel like God's doing something in your spirit as you listen to stories, plan on it. And we'll see how God leads.
Well, I already outed myself. Like I said, I worked for the church, and I didn't understand the gravity of our involvement. And then now that I've been there, I am like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go back. My husband, it was the last day, he goes, I can't wait to send them a gift. Like we're going to do, he wants to do a gift to the Pastor Dan was the pastor at Chumani. And it is different, because when you're there, you experience it and you're like, okay, like I get it. Like it's just finally like a click situation. And so I would encourage people to go, or to at least pray about it. Because it is such an amazing, amazing thing.
And like you've said it and Rick said it, but sponsoring these kids, it makes such a huge difference in their lives, but it changes you, and then having that opportunity of meeting them and making that lifelong relationship, that is something pivotal that you don't come back from, and it's just, don't sleep on it.
Yeah.
These
just
kids,
do it.
Just do it.
These
Play
kids
Nike.
need it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Well, especially that you can start playing that game all day, because it's $40 a month.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
That's
what do I
a
spend
movie
40
for 2 people. There you go.
Yep. And just call it good. So
Yeah.
And seriously, if anybody wants to sponsor kids and you can't figure out the website, or you really just want to make sure it's through like our Chumani, you can call me at the church if you can't figure it out. I think it's going on in the it's in our weekly email that goes out, and I'll help you.
We could probably even point some kids out.
Yeah, seriously.
Talk.
Yeah.
How did you decide who to sponsor
So
while we were there?
yeah, so when we were at Chumani, there were a few kids that really, really touched me, and I already knew, like, okay, like I want to sponsor one of them. What can we do? Because we were sponsoring somebody else, and we wanted to be smart about it. But I was like, there has to be, someone. And there was this girl, and her name was Elizabeth, and she just stood out to me because, like, when we first got there, she was like around me. She was playing the games. We did the hokey pokey and we did the patty cake, and she would push other kids. I know that sounds bad, but she would push other kids out of the way to like get to me, and like we'd play patty cake, and she'd move their hands, and then she'd be like, "I'm gonna do it," And so I just was like, okay, this kid has spirit,
Oh, yeah.
And when I was like taking photos of like the group, and she'd be all like, yeah, posing it up, and there each day I would come, she would look for me, and when I would go to the restroom, like she would come because they were like outdoor,
Yep.
She would come and run and like hug me, and it just like there's a language barrier, but there was communication between the two of us. And I was thinking about her, but I thought I was going to sponsor another little girl. And it was the last day when we were doing the farewell ceremony, and she was right across from me doing the song and dance, and I kept smiling at her, and she just had this cheeky look, and I was like, it's you, like for sure.
You hooked me.
And then a little extra on that was I knew her mom was the cook, Mary.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
and as we were walking up to the kitchen, like, I don't know, her mom looked at me and I looked at her, and I was like, she knows that I'm going to sponsor her kid. It just was supernatural. And so I did come home and talk to my husband about it, and he was like, yes,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. And then Jacob and I ended up sponsoring a little girl too. And that was funny because it was during the clinic day where there was a same thing. Like I was like, I've had a feeling we were going to sponsor another little girl.
You haven't told this story yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I knew we were going to sponsor another little or just another kid. Yeah. And so I had my eye out. There was a few that clung to me, and but honestly, my mind wasn't really there. Like, ooh, which one am I going to like you're just hanging out with these kids. And
there's 450 kids.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's not like you're thinking, oh, wait.
Yeah, like
You're just trying to survive at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, seriously. And like you're busy, and I'm just like, you're barely thinking. But there's this one little girl who kept like smiling at me, and like she gives me these eyes, and then she came up and like grabbed my pinky, and like I noticed that she was like not scared to go into the doctor room, but she would sit there just so she could hang out with me because she realized I had to come back in and help the other kids come sit down. So I'd come back in, she'd grab my hand again. And I'm like, how are you still in this chair? Like you should have been gone through the cycle, whatever. But then she did. She went through. There's lots of other kids. And Jacob was in that doctor room doing the exams on the kids. And we were just about to break for lunch. And he was like, oh, there's this little girl, and she just had beautiful eyes, and she was smart, and she wasn't scared. I'd go to take off their shoes because they had to like give them a full exam, and she would do it for me like right away, and like like I did it, like what's next? Like she was just ready to go. And as he's talking, I'm like, if it's this same little girl, like I just had this feeling. I'm like, it's the same little girl. And he goes, I took a picture of her, so maybe we could sponsor her. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Show me at lunch. And we got to lunch. And as soon as he turned his phone around, I'm like, yep, that's the same little girl. And if that is not a sign, I don't know what is. So I think it was like 2 days later when the sponsorship coordinator guy, Michael, was there. We all pounced on him and we're like, okay, we want this little girl. I think we may have talked about how cool Faith was. She's the social worker there in charge of all those kids and all the families and overseeing everything. Some of us didn't know the kids' names because they didn't always have name tags on. It was just that clinic day where they did. And so we'd show her a picture of a kid, and she knew exactly who it was, and would go to Michael and say, this kid. Blah,
Not
blah,
only
blah.
that, but how many siblings, and what do their parents do? And she knew everything. Where do they live?
Yeah, for 500 kids roughly. That's crazy. Yeah. But crazy cool. The people there put there on purpose. It is cool to see. So thank you guys so much for coming to talk again about Kenya, sharing our same story over and over again. But
it never gets old.
No, I know, right? I know. We could keep talking.
Yeah. So I said to the team the night before we left, I said, when you come home, there will be people that want to hear stories.
Yep.
And you need to have a 30-second story, a
Short and
2-minute
sweet.
story, and a 10-minute story that you can tell to just tell a story of what it was like. And you said something funny Wednesday night because you said I started telling a story and I was telling a 10-minute story, and I thought, nah, they don't want a 10-minute story, they want a 2-minute story. But we have lots of stories, so come up and
I was going
find
to say,
people.
this doesn't count then if this is about 45 minutes because
That's-
all of ours add up together. So
That- that's
fair.
right.
yeah.
It's
That's
fair.
right.
But thank you guys for watching. And again, if you have any questions about Mohi or Northpointe's involvement, give us a call at the church, shoot us an email, and we can get you some more information about that. But thank you.
Jumbo.